Welcome to episode 118 of the NERO Show. In today's episode,
if a brand releases a bike, how do you know if it's actually fast or not? We chat through how the bikes should be tested for 2025.
There's been some good stuff pop up on cycling YouTube. We have a look at the GCN Zwift Academy breakdown.
And we've got a custom-built Elves and a custom-built Cervelo. Dog of the bike or certified fast? We break it down. All right, let's get into it.
I'm not really sure where this chat's going to go, but I'm excited about it because we've seen a new bike leaked, good old-fashioned sneaky leaking happening.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's sort of a bit of a conversation starter, I reckon, for what's going on with aero bikes, wind tunnels, what we've seen. What am I alluding to, Jesse?
It's the Chinese brand Elves, many would have heard of, and they've got an update to their aero platform, the Falith. Previous version was called the Elves Falith Evo. Now we've got leaked photos of the Elves Falith EXP, which should be coming sometime in about March. So some leaked photos on Instagram. Why is it interesting? Because look at it. So for those just listening, full-on aero bike from the side. So deep fork, deep down tube, deep seat tube wrapped around the rear wheel. But they've done the Trek ISO flow butthole in the seat tube. So very much a Madone ripoff in the seat tube area there.
Is there a bit of Y1RS as well with the seat post? Is that a disconnected seat post?
Yeah. So it looks a bit like that. So obviously, because they've done the Trek thing, the seat tube's only that little bit coming up from the top tube, and it does look a little bit offset further forward than the rest of the seat tube down there. So a bit of Y1RS, definitely a bit of Trek Madone, but it's almost, this looks like what the Trek Madone update would have been.
Yes, well said.
If they hadn't made the Madonda.
100%. Good call.
So
good call. That's
kind of interesting. Wide forks on the front. Straight off the bat, I'm interested. Yeah. I want to know more. I think it's an interesting looking, modern designed bike. I think looks pretty interesting one to follow.
And this is Elves. Elves are not. What was that brand that Patrick was riding that was just literally ripping off Scott Foyle's?
Oh, that was the Tantan.
The Tantan. Like,
yeah. This
is not Tantan. This is an Elves. This is a legit. You know, they're ridden by race teams somewhere, I'm sure. No, they are actually. I'm pretty sure they are.
They're there with a Yolio or
yeah. There you go.
Anyone like that?
Yeah. So according to this little released image that we've seen, it's blazing through the wind. You see?
Yes.
But we don't know how fast it's blazing through the wind. And this is potentially a bit of a problem for it.
That's the $1,250 per frame set and handlebar question. How fast is it actually? Because this will be one of the first Chinese 2025 bike releases, or actually probably one of the first releases for any bike. And I wanted to take a bit of time to have a chat through what do we expect to see in 2025 in terms of bike testing, validating your product. What kind of, where have we been at the past and where are we going with that? And by that, specifically, generally, I'm meaning here, obviously, wind tunnel testing. Yeah. So to do that, I've done a bit of research, I've done a bit of homework, and I thought a good way to approach it would be, let's look at, in previous years, what some of the big brands and some of the other Chinese brands have done for aero testing in their white papers to kind of get an idea of what other brands have done. And then let's have a chat about what we would expect to see in 2025 for some of the brands. And that way, as we go throughout the year, we can reference back to some of this chat and kind of see where the brands are going in this. And so the first one I thought I'd start with was actually the new Trek Madone Gen 8 release. They had their white paper. So Trek released the new Gen 8. They give us data in the wind tunnel compared to the previous Gen 7 and their climbing bike, the Amonda. So we've got two other reference bikes to compare to. They did their wind tunnel testing at multiple speeds, they said, but they've only actually given us the data and the graph from one testing speed, which is 22 miles an hour. It's about 35 kilometers an hour. We keep that in mind. So what we're looking at here is this graph, which we can put up. So this has got all the good, firstly, a few things. They've got all the yaw angles laid out. And so we can see across different yaw angles, which is the oncoming wind. how does the bike test? So that's the first thing. That's nice to see. So we can see some trends in that. Then they overlaid the 3 different bikes in there too. Then what they'll usually do is just giving someone a graph like that isn't really useful because like, okay, whatever. How much faster is it? And so what brands will do is give, they'll weight all the different yaw angles in terms of what they deem to be most common that you'll hit when you're riding, and then sum that up to a single number in terms of what's saved at that certain speed. This is where one of the first question marks is. You go, well, how have they weighted the individual yaw angles to come up with that one number? So Trek, in this instance, didn't explain how they weighted the yaw angles, so that's just something to note for future comparisons. But when they did their weighting, and they basically came out and said, well, the current version versus the new version we're coming out with is almost identical speeds, like 0.1 watt difference. It's basically identical. They have listed as well the spec of the bikes. So in the detail of what bottles were on it, round bottles on the old version, aero bottles on the new version, handlebars, wheels, tire width. So they've done a good job to actually explain what setup it was tested with, so that's good to see. The reason why seeing the graph with all the different yaw angles is useful is you can see roughly under what different conditions it performs better. And the good thing for the new Madone was that on the yaw angles that you see most often, 0, 5 degrees, up to plus or minus 10 degrees, the new Madone was better. It was only the wider yaw angles where the older Madone was faster, but then obviously they do their averaging to take that all into account, and it's about the same speed. The reason why the detail is important is because it allows us to then dig a little bit deeper because we have that detail. So the first question is, well, you tested it at different speeds. The industry standard for aero testing in a wind tunnel is 45k an hour, maybe 40, somewhere 40 kilometers an hour or faster. Generally, testing at 50, 60 kilometer an hour isn't done as well because you're not seeing that speeds that often. So them testing at different speeds, but only showing the result at 35k an hour, that's a question mark because you start to go, how does the aero performance of the bikes change as the speed gets higher? And you would suggest that a deeper tubed bike, like we see in a time trial bike or a track bike, would perform better at a higher speed than the more do-it-all frames at the slower speed. So I actually just kind of give a bit of a spoiler. Trek actually provide a lot of information here, so I'm not like criticizing for that. It just brings up question marks that you can then ask. And then also they tested the new one with water bottles. That's interesting. So they did explain that they weren't hiding it. But if you then ask a question of, well, how many watts does the water bottle save? How many watts does an aero bottle save? Given that after they weighted all the yaw angles, the bike was the same speed as the old Madone at 35 kilometers an hour. And we got some data on aero bottles. So if we dig into that a little bit more, AeroCoach found that replacing a 500ml round water bottle on the down tube with an aero bottle saves about 4 watts at 40 kilometers an hour. And interestingly, Trek, when they released these water bottles, did their own testing, and they claimed that it's 1.8 watts worth at 35 kilometers an hour, or at 45 kilometers an hour, it's 3.8 watts. So 3.8 watts at 45 kilometers an hour is very close to what AeroCoach found, about 4 watts at 40 kilometers an hour. And so you can kind of see it's somewhere in that realm of 3 to 4 watts at that 40k an hour for aero bottles, which would actually make the new Madone slower than the old Madone if it had round bottles. So that's where them providing a good level of detail in the testing allows us to then make better decisions and kind of split hairs there. So just 2 more things on Trek's white paper aero testing that I just wanted to get on before we move to the Tarmac SL8. This is their testing of the complete bike after it's built, comparing to their other models. They did aero test designs in the design stage. So they have what looked like 3D printed prototypes in the wind tunnel with the dummy as part of the design process. They had the pedaling leg dummies. So that's good. This isn't just validation testing after you've already made the bike and then going, oh, well, actually, how fast is it? They were in the wind tunnel testing different 3D printed prototypes. So that's nice to see. That's good from Trek. And then final point I had was just in terms of digging into some of the numbers. The previous Trek, the Madone Gen 7, was 207 watts at 45 kilometers an hour from Tour Magazine's testing. Given that Trek say the new one's the same speed with aero bottles, if you put round bottles on the new Madone and Tour Magazine, if they had it to test it, which they haven't got access to the new Madone, that would lose 4 watts at 45 kilometers an hour, which would put it at 211 watts in Tour Magazine's testing. We can say that with pretty high level of confidence. Unfortunately, that's not even faster than the Specialized Tarmac SL7, not the SL8. It's not even faster than the SL7, which is released in 2020. And also keeping in mind that that situation I just outlined is best case for the new Madone, because they said it was as fast as the old Madone at 35 kilometers an hour. That's the testing they had. I bet they have testing at a higher speed, and I put good money on it that you would start to see a bit more of a separation between the bikes, in that the old bike would get faster as the speeds go up. So 211 watts for the new Madone in Tour Magazine's testing through the process I just explained is best case. I reckon it actually might be a little slower. As I've just outlined, I have my gripes with some of this, but actually, as we're going to find out, the level of detail they've provided there is actually pretty good. It's not total garbage. So that's Trek's white paper. That's what their standard is. Now let's move to the Tarmac SL8. So interestingly, there's a whole page on the Tarmac SL8 white paper that explains how they weigh their yaw angles. Oh, we collected all this data and we spread this, and they show the whole graph that has all the distribution, and you can go in and interestingly see in that distribution just how little time is spent above plus or minus 10 degrees of yaw. It's really low. It's all 0 degrees, 2 degrees, 5 degrees, and really drops off a cliff. So that's interesting. So they provided that. That's how they're weighting it. But there's no actual wind tunnel data for the Tarmac SL8 from Specialized. Very interesting. So they haven't done what Trek did. There's no yaw angle, analysis of the SL8. There's no what's saved. There's nothing. There's no actual wind tunnel data. What they do provide, if you go down, is they have this weird graph, which is SL8 time ahead of the SL7 and the Venge after riding for an hour on a set gradient, which is just a very strange way to present the data. Now, Specialized have a wind tunnel. So I'm not saying the bike hasn't been tested in a wind tunnel. I'm just saying they haven't chosen to be transparent with their data. They've chosen to just crunch it all into this one graph, and then they say, this is what you get.
It's a very Tim Cook, Apple launching a new product with this much faster than the predecessor, and it's just this line with nothing labeled on either X or Y axis.
I was gonna say it is very much like that, and like Apple, Specialized are saved by the fact that Tour Magazine have objectively tested, and thankfully the data lines up with what they provided in this graph. So it's kind of like Apple, where they release a product and then Marquez Brownlee goes and benchmarks it. And then he goes, oh yeah, this is what it is. And usually the Apple products are really high performing. So it kind of lines up. But if you're just looking at pure data and not giving them the benefit of the doubt, this is pretty slack in terms of what they've provided. Out of interest, what does the graph actually show? Well, it shows that if we take the 0% gradient, so dead flat road, after an hour, it's 3.5 seconds ahead of the Venge. That would be within the error of the testing. So it's basically the same speed according to this graph. 19 seconds ahead of the SL7 after an hour. That's, how many, you would know, how many watts would you have to save to go 19 seconds faster over an hour? It's not that much. And that kind of lines up with Tour Magazine's testing, because it's about the same speed as the Venge, and it was 3 watts faster than the SL7. So thankfully, that checks out with Tour Magazine's testing, but obviously, if Tour Magazine hadn't tested it, you'd just have to be taking their word for it through this kind of weird, crunched down version of the data. So but that's it. I mean, that's all Specialized provided. That's worse than what Trek provided. That's a lot less detail. If you gave Trek a B+, given that they actually showed the yaw angles, it's just that the speed wasn't where we would like to see, where I would like to see it, and they didn't explain how they weighted the yaw angles, and it wasn't compared to a competitor's bike. It was compared to their own bike, and it had the aero bottles on. So it's not an A, it's like a B plus, but the data was good. This, what Specialized provided is like a like a C.
Just going to quickly say, and I know you've got another one you're going to talk about, but just sitting here as a punter, and I just want to know, is this a fast bike? Is my bike a fast bike? Sitting here as a punter, it kind of reads to me, and listening to you, like the brands don't even believe the data that they're giving us. They're giving us Apple-style lines to fill in gaps. No one's mentioned turbulent air, which other brands are using as their entire brand philosophy at this point. So I don't know. I'll let you finish, but sitting here right now, they're not even selling this to me.
I'll try and keep this moving. So the last example we have was a Chinese bike that got released and actually had the best aero testing, wind tunnel testing of any product I've seen. And it was actually the SEKA Spear. So let me go through why is this. Firstly, they disclosed which wind tunnel they used and which testing partner they used. That's important, firstly, just to trust that the data has been calculated and collected well because they used Aero Coach, so that has a bit of weight to it. And also, there's some degree of independence there because if Aero Coach tested it, obviously, SEKA are contracting Aero Coach to run the testing, but you would think if Aero Coach have some ethics and morals that they're going to make sure that it's all done as objectively as possible, so that's a plus for that. They disclosed what they tested against. Remember the Colnago came out, the Y1RS, and said, against the best competition. We're not going to tell you who. SEKA went, no, we'll tell you who. So we tested it against our old SEKA Exceed. That's the Factor Ostro VAM lookalike one. Against an S-Works SL8 and against a Giant TCR. And they have all the specs. We used Zip 404 standard wheel set, Pirelli 28C tires, Dura-Ace group set, and the stock handlebars that came on each bike. This is very much like a research paper almost that they're laying out. If anyone's watching it, you'll see it looks like a scientific research paper. They also provided an appendix down the bottom of the white paper, which outlines all the specs in detail. I'm guessing had photos. Unfortunately, they used a QR code to link to that, and when I scanned it to check it, it had expired. But I won't hold that against them. I'm sure if you emailed them, they'd send it through. So the level of transparency in the actual testing setup is really good. So how did they actually test it? 40 kilometers an hour wind speed. So not quite at the 45k an hour that Tour Magazine tests with, but it's better than 35. And they provided a reference for the calculation they used to weigh the yaw angles when they come up with a single number. So because as I said, there's room for playing with the numbers if you start changing the yaw distribution, but they've explained how they calculated it. And they used a half-body dummy with static legs that weren't moving and tested with a rider on it. So 2 different conditions. So they go and test it and they start to provide the data. Not only do they give us the graph with the dot points, they've got, there's spreadsheets here with the dot point CDA numbers down to, all the fine level of detail. So if you wanted to recalculate it or use it, it's all in there to be used. I've never seen that. Usually they just Trek give you the graph, which is good. Specialized give you some regurgitated calculation simulation version of it. And then they put that all together and they give you the standard graph that like Trek did with the, with it all laid into there. And then they sum up they weigh it according to the yaw angles and give you the single bang on one number. That's all good. Then is where you get to the kind of interpretation of the results. Now, thankfully, we can do this because they've explained how they've done it all. So, for example, with the test with the bike, with the rider on it, the Spear was the fastest. And they put that down to when the rider's pedaling with the legs moving, their wind eye thing at the back, the wind eye sucks the air through. And so when you've actually got a rider on it in the legs, it's faster. Now, whether you believe that or not, that's up to you, but you can make that call. In the half dummy test with the static legs not moving, their old Exceed was the fastest. Then the SL8. And the SEKA Spear was close to the SL8, but a little bit slower. And then the dog of a TCR was way down the back. But because they provided that data, you can then look at it and go, okay, was the Spear faster with the rider on it? Maybe because of potentially some error in the position the rider was holding, or maybe the wind eye is really effective. And someone with more expertise than me could probably make that call because they've provided the data. And so I would give that basically an A+. Like, there's really nothing they've left out. It's almost too much. You're scrolling through this white paper going, what am I even looking at? But it's all in there. So kudos to SEKA Spear. That's kind of, as far as I'm concerned, the gold standard of presenting your testing results.
And yet you can't actually get the bike. Look, here's the problem, Jesse Coyle. You are, and I love the fact that you just went through all that, and very valuable, but you're viewing this from your coaching scientific brain, and you're not viewing it as what it really is, which is an absolute slide of marketing bullshit. The entire white papers are completely all back engineered to suit whatever narrative each brand is going to tell. And do you know what? I don't care. I don't care about the results. I do very much care about that. But what I don't care about is a brand trying to sell you their own story with their own testing. And in the end, I don't actually think it's up to the brands to tell us this stuff, because like you've just detailed, there is so many variables. There's so many different testing protocols. There's so many different speeds, positions, with legs, without legs, all this kind of stuff, with bottles, without bottles, that ultimately a lot of this data it makes us talking about aero bikes, I think we lose a lot of people because we're talking about different yaw angles and this guy tested it with that guy. The simplicity of picking a bike up in the bike shop and going, that's lighter than this one, that everyone can get their head around. Even you and I'm sitting here listening to you talk about this. I'm starting to go, hang on, so is the SL8 the faster one? I don't know. Okay, what does that mean? Well, I'm saying that if it's not up to the brands to actually give us meaningful stuff, who else can do it? Is there an independent media conglomerate who can do that? Potentially one that sits behind a paywall, maybe, who could come out and actually set a protocol standard of this stuff that we can rely on. Like we have an Energy Star rating system for white goods in this country. Why can't we do that?
Okay,
or,
yeah,
hang on, let me just go one more.
All right.
Why can't the UCI do it? They put a stamp on all their bikes. You have to get a stamp on the bike before it's allowed to be raced. Why can't every frame go into the UCI and have a set protocoled testing regime? And it comes out, slaps it on, you're a 206. Thank you very much. Next. Done. Move on. Jesse and Chris, done. No shit chat about aero bottles and what it's all about. So I don't know. I just feel like we've sort of stepping into this. Well, we've begun falling down this rabbit hole of the aero testing, but I'm not sure it's actually up to the brands to prove it.
It's absolutely 1,000% up to the brands to prove it. And doesn't need to be, if it's done well, it doesn't need to be a rabbit hole, really. There are some edge cases, like if you've got a moving dummy, like I just explained with the SEKA Spear. But the Tevelo, for example.
Well, hang on, just the SEKA Spear. Perfect example. Best in class testing results. Can't get the fucking bike.
Well, that's a separate story.
No, it's not. It's the same story. Because
what do you mean?
That's my point, is that here's a brand that, okay, let's say they're an up-and-coming brand or whatever. They prioritize testing, getting all this information out there, and forget about the actual distribution side of it because they've put all the eggs in that basket. And so the other side falls over, whereas a brand like Specialized, which can do all, are able then to go out to market. So I don't think you can say it's not relevant in this conversation.
No, but the point that would be, look, that's their own problem that they can't produce enough frames. Like, okay, I'll take that on what it is. But I think on the other side of the coin, for a brand like Tevelo, who when the bike came out, I said, looks pretty quick. I'm pretty sure I even said they're going to need to test this at some point. Otherwise, you're just selling. Like the Tevelo, there's another team, NorCal's on it, that Park Hotel team's, all these people are on it now.
There's a Miami team on it as well. Yep.
So there's an example of if you're Tavello, right? What do? Do you invest in getting it tested to validate if it's actually quick or not? Or do you put that budget into just giving more influencers and teams the bike so you can just sell more? But you actually haven't proved that your bike's quick. It probably is, but I think it's on the brand to put the money in and take it to someone like Aero Coach or whoever does the testing and just validate it. Just pick one other bike that you think it's competing with that is already been validated and just compare it. I think that is kind of at this for 2025. That should be a standard. Otherwise, what are you selling?
All right, how about this? How about this as a halfway house? If you are going to put the word aero in your bike name or sell it in an aero category, it needs a level of certification, whether that be from the UCI, whether that be from...
No.
No?
Yes, but you're kind of like 3 steps ahead. You're like, well, this would be good if it could be nationally certified by an international governing body, and let's get the bloody...
Let's get Elon onto it.
Yeah, let's get NATO to take him in, or bloody... United Nations can... No. Look, okay, eventually, yeah, that'd be nice if there was some international certification. You know what would be better than that? Or you know what would at least be better than nothing? Would be that the brands at least validate it at some stage. And the reason why I think it's possible, it's not that expensive. So I did some digging. Okay, well, let's say Tavello wanted to get their bike tested against an Aero and an SL8.
When you said you did some digging, you texted Joe.
Yes.
Yeah.
and did some Google. Well, they put these are private wind tunnels. There's blokes paying for wind tunnel testing so they can get a bit faster. Like, it's a private service now. This isn't some this university, has a contract and I could no.
No, they're
you
testing rockets and yeah.
You're in there. Yeah, you're in there with Elon and his rockets. No. It's just private level stuff, consumer level stuff. So a full day of testing in the tunnel is around £5,000 to £6,000. There's got to be a lot of assumptions here because obviously I don't know the full details. And in a full day of testing, if you're using the half dummy, you could reasonably test four bikes, 4 setups. Or, for Tavello, if you want to do a bike with a rider on it and one with a dummy, you could do you versus the SL8, one with a dummy, one with a rider, and you could validate that in one day, which would be between £5,000 and £6,000. Isn't that a reasonable expense for a bike brand that's selling frames all over the world and has teams riding them and has got all the influencers on them? That should be a standard of entry, is you validate your frame.
But I think you've kind of, mentioned the problem here is that you're validating the frame that you've already made.
Well,
and so
therein lies, yes.
And that's where the imbalance comes with the other brands. Like you mentioned with Trek, they had buckets of models and frames that they were testing, and they narrowed it down and they found this one was the better one.
Yeah.
Whereas when you make the one frame and you're like, oh shit, here we go, boys.
Okay.
Let's go.
Yeah, and the problem that is actually a thing in research. It's called publication bias, where if you do a research study and the results aren't quite in line with other research, or maybe it's not a statistically significant result, and so you don't even bother going through the steps of publishing it. You just kind of bury the results because it's not significant. That is a thing in scientific research, which is an issue. And that's sort of a thing that could happen here potentially is you go and test it, and maybe it's not that quick, but you've already got the mold and you've produced the bike, and so you don't actually end up seeing the results. I'm with you. There's lots of ways in which this isn't great. But I think more brands doing what SEKA did is better than what we've got now, which is just nothing. And I mean, look, ideally, they're testing in the production phase so that if it doesn't come back that quick, they can make changes. But that's probably another level on top.
All right, we'll just pause for a quick moment because today's episode is brought to you by SEKA, and there is a new product to chat about, Jesse.
Yes, emergency, hit the brakes, stop there. They have released a new product, a complete update to their Ultimate Tubeless Sealant, still called Ultimate Tubeless Sealant. It's not a new product. The old one was really well regarded for its sealing abilities, but didn't last that long, and you couldn't inject it through the valve core. What have they done? Gone away, worked on it. They've updated it. So it's got the same sealing ability for punches up to 6 millimeters, but it lasts up to 6 months long in the tires, and you can inject it through the valve core. So they've just taken what already worked and just made it better.
Now, I have an anecdote, Jesse Coyle. I've been riding this stuff for the last 3 or 4 months, and just last weekend, I had a fake puncture. So out on the road between Brooklyn and Calgary, proper Australian chip and seal gunk, picked up what was essentially a little puncture, self-sealed. I actually didn't realize that I'd had the puncture at the time. Obviously, it wasn't until much later on, stopping at a traffic light, turned around and discovered that, there was a little bit of sealant on my back lights. It had self-sealed. I'll obviously put some B-roll up of all of this. And so I can 100% vouch for, and that was horrible, dreadful roads. Just what I needed.
Yeah, it's really good. So they're actually standing by the sealing power of the sealant for their pro gravel races in the Lifetime Grand Prix races. If you're a SEKA sponsored athlete and you get a flat where you have to do a wheel swap or plug it or put a tube in, they'll give you $500 as a bad day bonus.
Wow.
So SEKA putting their money where their mouth is with their pro athletes. That's a funny one they're doing for this new product.
Now, as I've mentioned in the past, you can grab this directly from their website and it will ship directly to you from your own country. If you do go ahead and use the code NEROSHOW at checkout, you will receive 15% off. And go and get yourself a bucket of sealant. And thanks to SEKA for supporting today's episode. I realize we've spent the best part of 30 minutes talking about aero testing. Where does it rank now for you in terms of if you were buying a bike? So if you had a pyramid of, let's say, testing, weight, grade of carbon, geometry, subjective ride report. What's the number?
Number one is what it looks like.
Okay.
Because you're getting within 5 watts of the testing based on what it looks like.
So you're just gonna
shoot me down if you want. You can, right? So I think just looking at it, I can look at the new Elves and go, it looks pretty quick. It's a chunked out aero bike. All right. And for most people, that's close enough. They don't really need to see the testing. But yeah. So
but is it number one for you then? You look at it first. You go, right.
Well, I care about if I was buying a bike, if I was getting a new bike, I want a aerodynamically optimized bike. And the first thing I'm going to do is just look at it. Is it like how deep's the fork? It's not rocket science. How deep's the head tube? Then I do think there are different. It depends on the price as well. If I'm paying now, what was it in Malaysia? No, so that was the Malaysian price of that Elf. So it would probably be more expensive in the US or Australia. But they're doing it's a $1,250 USD frame, including the handlebars. Am I expecting? Or do I want to see wind tunnel results from that? No, I'm probably happy just to go, cool, it looks fast. If I'm paying $4,000 for a frame set and it doesn't have good aero testing data, and I mean good, like I don't think the Trex testing for that price they're charging is good enough. So it really does, everything comes back to price. As you're paying for a brand name frame, you're expecting to see the testing. And same with, and that's why I mentioned the Tavello, is because the Tavello's in a price range, which is that third wave of carbon, Chinese carbon we talked about. It's the upper level. I would expect that if I'm paying what was the price? $1,800 USD, including the handlebars, that they could afford 1 day of testing at Silverstone. Got to pay someone's flights to get over. You rent you get a bike to test. Yeah, add in some incidentals, it's £10,000. I think that should be, for the price you're paying for the frame, you should get some testing for that. It's really, for me, it's related to price. What do you think?
I think it's a situation, you kind of touched on it there, where it's not every brand and not every release is created equal. So, for example, if Giant released a new Propel this year, I want a friggin' encyclopedia of testing results. I want to spend a week going through all the testing results, and then I'll start to look at things like, okay, the grade of carbon, that's interesting, or the production, the geometry, all that sort of stuff will kind of play a role in it for me. Whereas you're right, like if this particular bike comes out, the Elves, it's a situation where I'll go a look. I'm more than happy just to I would like some testing results, definitely. I will then look at the weight of it, because I do feel like this would have a potential to be a little bit of a dog in terms of just how much chunk they could throw in there. But yeah, it's like I'm judging them on different priorities, really.
Here's the thing. If you actually have a fast bike, if you're Elves and you've actually done a good job on the frame and you send it in there and it's as fast as a Canyon Aero or next to an S5, the ROI on the wind tunnel expense is huge. You go then, we'll fucking talk about it. You can make Instagram post reels. Look, we're the same speed. It's all been tested. It's in here. It looks the same speed as an S5. You'll sell them. You'll make that money back in a month because people will know it's. I swear that would be worth it, surely.
But it's interesting how neither of us mentioned subjective ride reviews or a ride review from a legacy media organisation in any of our assessment of it, which is funny because that's what Tavello have done. Tavello have like just doubled down on, right, let's give it to influencers, let's get it out in the public and let the word of mouth do the trick and try and fill in the gaps for testing. So, you know, it kind of sounds like both of us are saying, no, we want more than that. It's not particularly relevant.
Yeah. And also because it's never been easier to test. You just email the Aero coach, you book it in. You don't need special connections. You just need a bit of cash and the commitment to do it. And I think if you actually got a good bike, it's worth the money. If I was a marketing person at a bike brand. Maybe I could be wrong. Maybe it's not worth it. Maybe most people, if you do the testing, people don't actually care. But I find then, in 2025, I find that hard to believe. People love, Rule 28 do those reels where it's like rider in different positions and they got the what things. They get thousands of likes and everyone's frothing actual numbers now. I find it hard to believe that wouldn't be worth the investment.
All right, Jesse, a couple of subscriber questions this week presented by Pillar Performance.
Yes, Pillar is a sports micronutrition brand, probably best known for their triple magnesium that we've spoken about on the show before that can help your sleep and recovery. So check that one out. And while you're on the site, check out a few of their other products. They've got things like Ultra Immune Vitamin C, Ultra B Active, Omega products with fish oil, and a few other micronutrition products.
All right, we've got a couple of dogs or fast bikes to get through, Jesse Coyle.
Bring it on.
Here we go. All right, the first one up is a custom-built and Cerakoted Elves Falloth Pro. Speaking of Elves themselves, 32 mil GP 5000 Zip 404s. We have a one-piece bar and stem, 120 38s. As I said, full ceramic speed OSPW, ceramic speed coated chain and pulleys. Dog or fast bike? I know that the owner, he's gone to a bit of effort with the old photo shoot here, and I've also noticed that he's like color coordinated the disc rotors with the custom paint job.
I do rate the paint job, very nice. And I think it fits the Elves Falloth Pro because it has those big tube shades, kind of a bit ugly in an aero industrial way, so that kind of fits. There's something about that Elves frame. It's just always bugged me. It's got all the features, wraps around the rear wheel. It's got the deep down tube. But I have a feeling I can just sniff. It's not quite as fast as it looks.
Yeah,
There's something going on with the fork.
Yeah.
I can't put my finger on it.
Nah, this is a
the
dog.
The frame, I feel like, is not actually as fast as it
Coyle
looks.
is a dog, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Like you said, don't let the book, don't judge, there you go. Don't judge a book by its cover. Got there in the end. Yeah, I agree. I think this is one that looks fast, goes slow. So those Zip 404s, too narrow for me. Too narrow. I reckon he's got 32 mil tires on there. They're going to be blowing out. And the reason he's doing that, I know the reason he's doing that is because this thing is a plank of wood that drifted in off the Atlantic Ocean and washed up on shore. And he's put a group set on it. He's trying to optimize the living daylights out of this. There's not a watt being lost in that efficient drive chain.
I also give credit for when components match the build. And I think putting Dura-Ace and ceramic speed on this is lipstick on a pig, and I don't think it fits. I'd be more likely to rate it if it had like 105 DO2. I think it would fit. Dura-Ace on this doesn't make sense to me.
Yes, it's just the wrong wheel selection. Yeah, I agree. That's I hate to hate, but I think we've got to call a dog when we see it.
Yes.
So unfortunately,
certified woof.
All right. Thank you for that one. The second one comes from this comes from a young racer in the UK.
Okay.
I'm not sure whether I'm saying names at this point. I don't know whether we out people for. I mean, we got Jesse. We got absolutely. We've got enough of these. We could just do a show a day with just these. Is the amount of that came in. But
context is good. So
that's
UK,
why I wanted to give you context.
Racer. Yep.
UK racer.
Okay.
So it's a Cervelo Soloist 54 centimeters, Ultegra 12-speed DR2. He's got the 4044s, 180 hubs, 54 tooth. He's got 28s. Yeah, they'll measure out to 31, the same as me. 4i power meter, 160 mil Ultegra cranks. Oh, he's full Kool-Aid. 4840 Dura-Ace with 1134. Cervelo R5 stem and bearing cap. That's what's on my Aspero. Okay, handlebars. He's gone the 3540 integrated handlebar. Elite.
Oh, the Envies. Yeah.
Envies.
Yes. Okay.
An NTN low friction seal bottom bracket bearing. Silka
It's an interesting choice for the UK.
Yeah, that is. And a G-Technig ceramic coating.
This ceramic coating thing, the last person was ceramic coated. Why am I ceramic coated?
What are we doing over here?
This is just amateur hour.
Step it up, boys.
Okay.
And there is the image.
7.5 kilos with pedals. 7.3 no pedals.
It's a problem here.
Okay.
The problem I have here. And I shouldn't judge a soloist just because it's a Cervelo to compare it to an S5, but I can't help myself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if this is a Look Blade RS, I'm not judging it. I'm not comparing it to an S5, but because it is the Cervelo, I have to almost judge it, compare it to an S5.
Yep.
And I take it another level, and we go, we are optimized here.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing some this is someone who's they're aware of yaw angles. There's a yaw angle chart somewhere in this fella's bedroom, and he knows deep down
under the mattress somewhere. He's been reading
that his yaw angles aren't going to be performing at that higher level.
It is a certified DOG. Should have got the S5. I don't know any other way to put it. I don't know how anyone with a soloist is going, this is awesome. You could do any tweak to that, and at the end of the day, you're just going to wish you're on an S5.
Benefits of the soloist. I did a little research on this because I'll be honest, I'd completely forgotten about the
S5 will be the same weight, 7.5.
But that's got Ultegra on it.
Okay.
It'll be 500 grams. Yeah.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah.
An Ultegra S5 and a 54 with 40 mils isn't 8 kilos.
Maybe not. No, it'll be high 7.
7.7 to 300 grams.
Somewhere in there.
All right.
But it's an interesting one because, correct me if I'm wrong, but are Cervelo the only brand to doing an aero bike, a do-it-all bike, a climbing bike? I can't think of anyone else doing it.
Yes.
And so I went a step further. Okay. So Soloist is and an endurance bike. That's the other. They do a Caledonia.
A Caledonia.
So they actually have the 4 of them. So last year, Jumbo, so that they've got access to all bikes. Have a guess how many race days the Soloist did.
5.
That's a good guess. Correct. Yeah, 5. It did 5 race days. A couple of races in February and did a couple later on.
We talked about it at the start of the season. Sepp Kuss was out testing it.
And so the rationale for running it was he could get, I think, 36 mil tyres or something on there running the 1x setup on it. So that's ultimately the rationale for running it. So it's an interesting one because it's a do-it-all frame sitting in a brand that's nailing the specific bikes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's almost being eaten by the success of the bikes around it.
Yep.
But the reason I mentioned in the very beginning, the context of this guy being a racer, the owner of this bike exists, but I don't think it's young Liam, unfortunately.
Yep. Keep sending them in. There's no free gimmies here.
Oh no!
No. You're gonna have to really push. There's not everyone's getting a certified fast.
I need to get some low friction seal bottom bracket bearings. Seemingly, that's what all the boys in the UK are on now. Now, speaking of bikes, can we mention the elephant/endurance bike in the room that's currently sitting over your shoulder there? You have you got another bike to test, Jesse Coyle.
This is not my doing.
No.
This is all Chris.
Yes.
Forcing me to
spread your wings.
I'm doing for the Giant Defy what I did on the end of the Malay. Rolled it in. Difference here being because it's got a Shimano group set, I can run the same wheels I run on the Tavello, the CRWs. And I'm going to be testing an endurance bike.
Yes.
What would you like to know?
Well, are there any wind tunnels? Having spent 40 minutes talking about it, are there any speed tests done on this?
0. Big fat naught.
So
has not seen a yaw angle.
So the first thing I want to see the big rig doing big rig laps, and you're gonna have to get your threshold back up because I want to see some average speed numbers. That's what I want to see firstly. I'm not interested in, it's nice and comfortable. I want to know where we sort of are placed.
I really disagree with that. Firstly, because I don't think I'm going to be able to, I can't replicate. The thing when you're doing those on-road tests is you have to do a lot of them. You can't ride it for two 40-minute efforts because the condition, you have to do a lot of them, which I did I was comparing the TCR to the Tavello. So I'm not going to go there. Because I can't do 360 watts for an hour anymore. That's probably the first hurdle to overcome. And then secondly, that takes you do one effort a week. You got to have at least like 5, 6 efforts.
At least half dozen, yeah.
Some of them it's too windy, so you disregard them. That's like a months long thing. So you're not going to get that. I also think it's pointless to do because I can tell you the speed. We put them side by side. It is a TCR. But it has a separate bar and stem, so you lose a watt or two. But it's faster because it has drop seat stays. You probably gain a watt or two. So it'll test the exact same as the TCR. Not slower, by the way. It's got the same kind of cut off back of the tubes. The down tube's the same. The head tube is basically the same. If they tested it, if Tool Magazine tested it and it was more than 3 watts off the TCR, I'd be shocked. So I don't think aerodynamic performance is something I'm going to be bothering to even really comment on. My answer to what would be interesting is, we had the discussion a few weeks ago about like when we're talking about the Basso. You're like, well, what's the point? Because it's just going to be, it's probably just going to be slower than an SL8, so you may as well just get the SL8. And I said, well, if the geometry fits you better, that's a plus, and if it's more comfortable, then those reasons could sway you. And so a few things I want to test, firstly related to the geometry. Not from a bike fit perspective, because you already know, you can just look up the stack and okay, well, I'm on an SL8 with 4 centimeters of spacers and I get on a Defy. Well, I can be in the same position but with no spacers potentially, or I can come up a bit higher. You already know that. Like me test riding it's not going to tell you that. But geometry doesn't just change bike fit, it changes how the bike handles. So curious in terms of that regard, what does it feel like? because you might want the geometry from a bike fit perspective to come up a bit higher and things like that. But does that then make it handle poorly? That's something I can get my nose around. And then obviously comfort. I don't see the point of that bike unless it's noticeably more comfortable than the NV Malay. Like it needs to be like a carpet ride. Otherwise, you're just going, well, may as well, geometry of the bike fit aside, like you may as well just get on to Velo if it's not that much more comfortable. So that's what I'm thinking.
So it's interesting. What you want to see is almost doubling down on the endurance side specs that we think are going to be superior. You want to know, are they superior? Whereas I'm coming from, this was my whole whinge when it came to the Basso thing, that I think people sort of misinterpreted. I get endurance bikes. I get it. But my thing is I want them to be sold differently, okay? And so, hang on, just hear me out. Okay. Hear me out. So I want you, as someone who has the appreciation of what a fast bike will be, I want you to give me the feedback of this and just how inferior that might be in those circumstances that it's out of its depth. Things like acceleration. I'm interested in that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And I'm not expecting it to be better. I just want to know, are we talking about this is a step back to ancient times, or are we just, just needs a little bit more of a wind. Like that's what I'm interested in.
Okay. Ride quality, stiffness, responsiveness, I can do.
Yeah. Now you've convinced me on straight line speed. You've convinced me.
No, but like trying to assess this. I'm interested to know if it performs well as an endurance bike. Not, is this something that Chris could butcher his way to convince himself it's a do-it-all?
No, okay, but this is the narrative. This is like when this chat goes too far, because I went and picked this bike up from its owner, and it had been lent to someone else prior to you. Oh, I know. I don't know why you're not first.
I
first come, first serve.
I'm getting handy down
these things out. And I asked him the same question. Is there any testing data on this? He's like, no, not really. But tell you what.
Between you and me,
the guy that was on this last week, he just came back and he just said, Strava PRs everywhere through the Royal National Park, everywhere, just rode around PRs, boom, 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 all because he's on an endurance bike, and he's just like, what's going on here? I didn't know this was such a fast bike. I'm getting PRs. So there's like this bizarre twist that's happened where suddenly, endurance bikes, it's like a secret sauce somewhere that's been fed into your legs, not the tailwind that's blowing you up the climb on this random segment that you've done 3 times. But so I just want that was sort of my point, is that there is a strange narrative that is sort of developing out there about this secret sauce of an endurance bike. I would like maybe some more, not facts, but just subjective coilisms.
Okay. All right. I will get to work.
What do you think of the build, actually, just quickly before we go through? Because this isn't a off the peg sort of number. It's a little custom job. Does it suit your the
owner? I feel like the owner of the bike has just started to spec it with what I want. I came off the MV. I was like, the stem's a bit short. And chain rings are, not quite big enough. Oh, well, we got a 130 stem. We got narrower bars, and they look like 165 cranks.
And has he gone up a size of bike for you as well?
It looks kind of it looks a bit bigger. I don't know if it's a 58, but it's got a 54 tooth chain ring. So, are we saying who owns the bike?
Yeah, we can.
Yeah. So, thanks, Alan. He's basically building, speccing them up more towards what I want, or maybe that just is a coincidence. But no, I think this is going to be. That Envy was a bit cramped. It was a bit difficult. This is probably going to fit me better than that did. So that'll be nice for testing purposes. SEKA power meter. I can put my Asiomas on.
Ooh.
There we go. You get 2 for 1 deal.
Yeah, wow. We're going to get a llama test.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah. We can do side by side?
The Sugi I found is very good. It's consistent and the app's really good. Like it's a very good.
Okay.
So you can scale the power. So if you'll often find with some of these, they might be out a certain percent, but it's consistently out a certain percent. And so you can scale that successfully in the app,
Okay,
which I've done in the past.
Should never be. That's disgusting. Should never be scaling. Should just be accurate. It's not accurate. Send it back.
No. Play on. Let the kids play. All right. Yeah, I'm insanely jealous of you just having this like sugar daddy who's basically just building your bikes to go and test and ride for the show.
Alan, a full chunked out aero bike would be my next request. If that could be worked on, that'd be lovely. SEKA
spear for me. Right.
I'm happy to go and try some routes and test some things that the people listening want to know. So I'll obviously go and satisfy my own little intuitions, but leave some comments. I'll read through the comments and let me know what you would like to see tested on the Defy, and I'll see if I can go and resolve it.
I'd love to see it tested against an SL4, but just make sure that it has
Thought you were gonna
narrower.
Oh, you were waiting for a moment to go
narrower handlebars.
What are you talking about, Chris? Come on.
Let's have a quick.
Come on.
Let's have a quick YouTube chat.
Yeah.
So, first up, Road CC comparing the Factor Ostro VAM in that Olympic colorway, which Factor sent out to them. Fantastic. And what do? They test it against a specialized SL4. Now, this has kind of lost a little bit of its punch because they've gone and changed the title on the video.
I'm always keeping an eye out for that. I remember Escape Collective did it with the carbon monoxide article. And I mean, it's fair enough. Sometimes you don't read the room right. We've probably done it before. But it's funny. So the new title on the Road CC video is Aero Bike versus Aero Position. Why spending thousands on a new bike might be slower, blah, blah, blah. I'm pretty sure initially it was like rim brake versus new Superbike versus old rim brake or something. It was playing more on that.
It was very much straight disc brake versus old rim brake chat. And so now it's gone to the position chat. What am I talking about? Yeah, so the new Factor Ostro VAM, and they did a speed test versus a specialized SL4. Yes, we are still doing that shit. And like they had the Factor had 45.5 centimeter bars on the drops. 45.5 centimeter bars on the drops versus the SL4, which had 38 centimeter handlebars. He rides in the drops for this test, and surprise, basically the narrower the SL4 is a tiny bit faster. And so we get to go down that wonderful chat about, bikes haven't actually developed at all in the last 10 years. And of course, the comments kind of loved it. And it's like race to the bottom content. And it's the content that we used to give GCN shit for.
Yeah.
Back in the day, like 2-3 years ago, every second video, you know it was
nauseating.
It was let's test some old thing versus that thing, test this, and it became like a meme, right? GCN in 2025 is churning out, I gotta say it, bloody good quality stuff.
Yeah.
Like, it's not for everyone, I get it, but like,
it's actually for more people.
It's probably for more people. And it's interesting, like Dan Lloyd's video about how he kind of fell out of love with the bike. Really interesting, in-depth stuff on the back of some of the stuff they did about Team Ineos and Zwift Academy. And we're going to get onto Zwift Academy stuff. So they're churning out this sort of stuff, and the essentially legacy media clowns are just racing to the bottom with slop, even though the brands like Factor are still giving them value. Honestly, we've sort of mumbled a little bit about it in the last couple of months that there seems to be a little bit of a drop-off on some of the YouTube stuff. I get it. I totally get it when it just turns into this race to the bottom. Because to me, that content doesn't help the conversation.
Look, the pushback would be, well, devil's advocate is that we take that for granted because we already know this. The braking's better, and it's more comfortable. But blah 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 blah. With disc brakes, with rim brakes, what would you say if they were like, well, not everyone knows that. There's still new people that maybe went around for that discussion, and this is interesting.
Well, don't hide that. Don't hide that chat in some bizarre handlebar test, which is what this was. Don't hide the fact that the narrower body position is going to be a faster setup, with the look and feel of it being a let's test a bike from 10 years ago against a new spaceship. That would be my pushback against it.
Yep. I happen to agree with you. It's just the same discussion we've had. You can't even you can't even really compare a rim and a disc bike fairly now because no one wants rim brakes. They don't work very well. So it's just almost a pointless discussion. And even in the video, in the summary, like he was like, "Oh yeah, the Factor was way more comfortable."
Well, that's I know.
And it was like, "Oh, so it's
stop
the same."
bearing the lead.
So it's about the same speed, but it's more comfortable, and the braking's better, and it would have been faster if you had the same width bars. Okay, you could have. What? And why did that need to be a 10-minute video that 53,000 people watched?
And they don't believe it. That's their heart's not in it. Like next week, or probably 3 days later, will be some video about the new wonderful, Y1 RS or something like that. So it just, you can tell they're kind of just going through the motions. And the other thing is, so this week, we found out that Netflix won't be doing did you see that? A fourth season of Unchained. And so it doesn't massively surprise me. We talk about this a bit. Like, I think we overinflate how important we think cycling is in terms of the mainstream. You often hear like, oh, Tour de France is the biggest sporting event in the world. You're like, is it really? Like, and then they make a whole Netflix series about it, and it's the first one of the sports ones to get canned. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure the actual audience is out there. Anyway, the reason I say that is there's going to be less actual content on mainstream media, and so once again, like, YouTube becomes a more important kind of avenue for this stuff. So stop racing to the bottom.
It's really interesting watching GCN. A lot of their most popular videos clearly aren't for people that would watch the NERO show. Like, they've got Gone in 60 seconds. We had a bike stolen, and this is what happened next. 536,000 views in 2 weeks. Like, they're blowing up. Even the Why I Stopped Riding Bikes, Fallen Out of Love, that one they did. Kind of going more the average Rob kind of thing to pull people in. That's cool to see. Now, one that got uploaded recently, Zwift Academy 2025, is off. Episode 1. Did you watch it? I did.
I did, actually. I was quite proud of myself watching it.
Yeah. Few Aussies in there.
Few Aussies. I think one of the girls who raced Amy's.
Yeah, who won the age category. She's in there. Yep.
Yeah, I want to ask you a couple of quick questions just about the testing protocol that they did on day one. I found this is not what I would have thought, put it that way. So the women's testing was a 1 minute all-out effort.
Solo, yeah,
on the flats.
And the same upper climb.
Yep. Followed by a side-by-side 30-second sprint?
No, not 30. I'm not sure. They didn't say the duration of the sprint. It wouldn't have been 30 seconds because two of them averaged above 800 watts. And a woman's not, at this level, a non-sprinter's not doing 800 watts for 30 seconds. So I think it was more like a 10-second sprint. It was just like side-by-side classic kind of town sign thing. Sprint
1
against the pro.
minute efforts.
Yep.
That's a really interesting one.
I think that's good.
That's good.
Pretty good. So 1 minute on the flat, and they were looking at the average power, the watts per kilo, and the speed to see kind of what position they were in. And then they did a 1 minute effort up a climb. That's an important duration for a professional rider. And then they did an 8 minute climbing effort. Yeah. Yep. That's covering the main energy systems from a capacitive point of view. I rated that. The problem is, not problem, but there's clearly two riders that were just better than the other two in the women's one. So Annabelle did really well in the 1 minute, and the sprint power was head and shoulders above. And then Emily did well in the climbing effort, and then the other two were pretty far behind. I mean, Chassa, the girl, did decent watts per kilo in the 8 minute effort, but she's much lighter than them. So she kind of got matched the watts per kilo, but raw power, she's like 50 watts less. And that's much easier to match the watts per kilo as a smaller rider. So I don't know, the story between the women's is kind of Annabelle as the bigger rider, better sprinter, better 1 minute power versus the Emily is more of the climber, and the other two, for the time being, seem like they're out of the running.
Right, so just run me through then the boys' testing protocol.
They did different. So they did 3 sub-maximal. I think they were 4-minute efforts, maybe 5 minutes. And then they were getting lactate taken up at the end of it. Then they finished it with a 4-minute max effort.
Yep.
And then so we can see the watts per kilo. Pretty underwhelming power, to be honest. 2 of them didn't. We got for 4 minutes. Remember, the lowest one was 5.83 watts per kilo at 70 kilos. 408 watts for 4 minutes. That's just, that's like that's Cat 1 level. Domestic. That's not even close. The next guy is 435 watts at the same weight. Interestingly, they're all about the same weight, 69, 70 kilos. 6.3 watts per kilo again for 4 minutes. Yeah, that's not going to be high enough. And then, again, similar to the women, then there's 2 of them were head and shoulders above the others. So 7.29 watts per kilo and 7.26 watts per kilo. And so that's 496 watts and 500 watts for 4 minutes. Again, not that mind-blowing. It's strong, but as a rider who's looking for a spot to slot into a World Tour team, I was underwhelmed a little bit by the men's, to be honest.
I think what's going on here, and I've been pretty critical of this, basically the last couple of versions of this, more in the fact that I really felt that, especially on the bloke side of it, that the teams they're not really into it. Like, they couldn't give a shit. I think the last few guys all just went to the Conti team.
Yes.
In fact, I'm pretty sure that's what the goal is here again. And it's complete mixed messaging, because the Rudolph sort of saying, look, we're doing these sort of test efforts because this mimics classics type efforts that the team do in Belgium and that sort of thing. None of these guys are that power profile. I can't imagine. These guys are too light. First off, to be, in that sort of mindset, to be cranking out just massive raw numbers, to be staying with the front of a World Tour race over, the Ode de Quermont or something like that. So it just seemed odd that clearly I get the feeling that you've gone and got guys that are going to have probably good watts per kilo over longer climbing distances, and you're giving them classics style testing. Does that make sense?
Does make sense. It does.
All right. What do you think about the 4 guys then?
I was glad that the 2 guys that did the most power in the 4-minute effort actually look like they can handle a bike.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I think it was Elliot, the Scottish guy, who's come over from soccer. He's clearly just trained a lot up on the trainer, and he looks very uncomfortable on the bike. His position is very wrong. He's clearly just spent hours and hours on the trainer. And like a rider like that, the chance that has any success at a professional level in a bunch in 2 or 3 years' time is just highly unlikely. Like, that takes years to develop. And so if he was the one that was cranking 7.3, 7.4 watts per kilo, you're going to have a lot of trouble, because they don't have time to do that kind of development. So Mattia was the guy that was here, did the Zwift Academy the last year. He knows how to race a bike. And then I think Noah was the rider with the mountain bike background.
He looks the best on the bike. Yeah, easily. He's got a really nice sort of pedaling style. Interesting. But the Elliot thing was bizarre. Like, they brought it up in the chat afterwards, and Rudolph was almost kind of doubling down on the fact that he looked so shit on the bike that it was a good thing, in the sense that his cadence was terrible, blah, blah, blah. Oh, but he's only been riding for 18 months. So think about how quickly, kind of coming at it from that angle, which has my little, Chris's cynical reality TV ears pricked up and going, I know what you're going to do here then. So that's going to be your storyline, because I still, and as much as I do love the production that's gone into this, I do think the actual, I've said it, Zwift Academy for a future was a one and done. And we all know who the one was.
Shame, because it has potential. It created Jay Vine.
Yeah, but they didn't. Yeah. Did they really want that? I would argue,
No, I'm not. I don't know. I mean, I don't really know. I'm just saying. I was looking at the watts per kilo, and I'm like, God, it'd be better if there was a real super talent in here. Like these numbers, 7.26 watts per kilo for 4 minutes. That's not a generational. That's not a Jay Vine. So, and that's what the talents a rider's going to need to make success out of this pathway, because it's you get the team spot, but you have to blow them out of the water. And I'm not seeing numbers here that are doing that. So unfortunately not looking the best from the men's side. Unfortunately, I don't know the numbers as well, like watts per kilo kind of thing for the women's side, so I can't really speculate there. The only thing I can say is, and that the coaches in the video said this, is that Annabelle looks. She's already done a season. Like she clearly looks like she can handle a bike.
Like she can ride a bike.
She looks like she could fit in to a peloton. The actual numbers, I'm not too sure on, as I am with the men's, but interesting to follow. But again, like Neve Bradbury, there's years with the Zwift Academy where nothing really comes of it. But every so often, it does find someone that legitimately ends up having a full-on career.
Do you know the format of it? Do they do the thing where they vote the guy off?
I'm not sure.
Not sure how they... Because they used to do that, where they'd get rid of
someone goes home.
Yeah. Where are the Americans again? It's another year.
No Americans.
No Americans again.
Canadian.
Scottish. Well, even though Trump wants them, they're not part of America just yet.
No, not yet. So no.
Yeah, it's another year. Find that interesting.
Did you know
Probably not.
that Zwift Academy was even running this year?
You're really asking the wrong person, Jesse.
That's why I want to know. Did you know it was a thing?
I assumed it would have been a thing.
But not assumed. Did you see anything and you were like, oh, Zwift Academy's going to be on soon?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I did.
Okay.
I did. I don't remember who did it, but someone did a Can I Survive the Zwift Academy workouts video at some point.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
So I do know that.
Oh, that's good. This is probably the first year where I completely forgot about it, and then this video popped up. I was like, oh, yeah, Zwift Academy. But maybe that's just because I'm not in the indoor training space.
Quick shout to Greg McCann. He's back.
Is this the guy that left his wife?
Yeah. Oh, hang on. He's up. They had a... It was all... I told you that. It got very emotional. She stayed in Mexico. He actually went back to England, pretty much racked it.
Huh?
Racked the whole trip. 6 months later, he's back. But he's struggling. He's battling.
Solo?
He's solo. He's now solo. And he's just like, don't want to be here. It's as I said with the first one, like it's tough watching. It's a bloke going through like, should I be here? And he's still got years left to do this. This isn't like to get it done.
To do what?
To cycle to the bottom of the world. He's
cycling
to the end. It's like there's 3 years left.
Oh.
This isn't like I just want to get it done before Christmas. This is like get it done before 2030.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's out there. He's upped his production value. But yeah, Greg, I don't know. Honestly, look, if you ask me,
riding from Alaska to Argentina.
Yeah. So he did half of it with his
Then
girlfriend.
did he go home?
Then he went home.
And then is he restarting the whole thing or going back to where he left?
He's gone back to where he left. Yeah. So he's fully.
Can we look up the rules on that?
Well,
I'm not sure. You can't do half a time trial, go to the cafe and finish the rest off later.
I don't think he's chasing Lockie's time.
Okay.
I'm not sure that's in danger. But he's fully like, I don't want to camp anymore. I just want to go to hotels. Oh, no. He's turned into Chris Miller. It's just like, I'd much prefer to just hit up a shower right about now. And he's also finding that like how nice people were when it was him and a kind of quite nice, cute girl, how it's more friendly they were, strangers, to now just random ginger dude from England hasn't showered in 2 weeks. He's finding people to be slightly less approachable.
Oh, I mean, I didn't quite realize. You're not kidding. So he uploaded 9 days ago, But the last video was 5 months ago.
Yeah, so
that
he
was the
went home
breakup video.
Breakup video.
Oh, I need to catch up.
Yeah,
Okay.
get onto
I'll
it.
add it to the queue.
Get it in there. It's good stuff. Greg, if you ask my honest opinion, Greg, rack it. It's not worth it.
That's an inspiration there.
It's not worth it. Like, honestly, go back to Victoria. That's his missus. That's whatever. Do whatever you want, but that's my opinion on the matter.
I'm going to shoot for the hip on this one. It's been sitting in the notes, and I haven't found anywhere to work it in. So I'm just going to throw it at you, and everyone listening can also have a think. If you're buying a new bike, do you want there just to be one model, or do you want to have different models with different grades of carbon, and then you can then choose? You want the better value, you want the top end one, or you just go, for example, Cervelo S5. That's it. There's one frame. Specialized, you've got the Pro, you've got the S-Works. What do you prefer?
Well, this kind of comes back to the chat we were having about the Soloist, because if you think about it, the reason Cervelo has the aero bike, the do-it-all, the climbing, the endurance bike, is because they don't spec down the grades of carbon. They just spec down the actual models as such. So, the S5 is a more premium bike than a Soloist, right? So do I prefer that lineup to I can get the SL8, but it's going to be the mid-tier different carbon version of it? I like choice.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to choose the additional models with the less premium bikes. Now,
do you have any first-hand experience riding bikes that have different grades? Like, have you ridden a frame set? But have you ridden a frame set and tried both types?
Yeah, it's not a great example, but I did ride an SLX Aero in the US, and then came back and got that, which is the CFR. And yes, that would be my one experience. They were the same model. Yeah. Different wheels, different tires, all that crap. But yes, I do have a history of it.
Would you say it's make-believe, or there's legitimate differences? Weight aside.
I don't think there's a general rule for it, unfortunately.
Depends. Okay, good answer. Yep.
I don't think there's a general rule. I think there's just as many dogs out there using T1189 Toray carbon, the best Japanese carbon money can buy.
Another anecdote to throw at you. I could be getting my wires crossed. I'm pretty sure that in the Venge, there was no difference between the S-Works version and the regular version, the Pro version. Someone said that in a video, and I can't remember who it was. But putting that out there.
Okay.
But the SL8's definitely a difference because it's like 150 grams lighter.
As a general rule, I don't like my grades.
Okay.
Don't like it.
Just pin it.
Just bang.
Okay.
Done. Spec it down with different group sets. That's fine. Look, I'll allow a special layup for the boys.
Yep.
For Tade.
Okay.
No issues with that.
Okay.
Fine.
Yep.
But no, I don't want catalogs of the same frame with degenerate carbon that's been sort of swept up off the factory floor and shoveled into a mold just before everyone went home at night. No, I don't want that. I want my one grade.
Okay.
It's interesting though. I had a quick look at some bike reviews from 2016, and the bike reviews from 2016 read so differently to now. But it's the first paragraph is always, what was the grade of carbon?
10R.
You got to. Actually, they don't say it, but it's just like, what that grade of carbon has done to increase percentage of stiffness. That's what everyone wanted to know. How can we claim? They all had testing apparatuses for their, stiffness tests and that kind of thing because it was all down to the grade of carbon that you got on there.
Okay. I'm with you. I don't like different grades because in some ways it punishes you if you're trying to do a value build. Because what if you're just like, I don't really need Dura-Ace. Ultegra's awesome. And I'm going to upgrade the wheels on this package anyway. But Ultegra only comes in the lower grade. But you just want the best frame. Okay, well then you're having to go buy the frame set or buy Dura-Ace when you don't want it. I feel like it's quite messy. Like, why should the top grade frame only come if you buy Dura-Ace? What's wrong with SRAM Force? You know, I don't like it. And so I prefer just everyone's getting the same frame and just make a good frame. Yeah, do that. And wouldn't there be inefficiencies with like different layups and you having to teach the person at the frame factory how to do
this one quicker?
It's just, I feel like that's just more money. Like if you just had one type of carbon, one layup, not one type of carbon, one spec. There would be an efficiency gain from that, which could potentially keep the price down, even though maybe it would bring up the price of the lower level a little bit, but you feel like it would kind of come out in a wash a bit.
I know the first comment under this is going to be, oh, these guys are so out of touch, they just think everyone can buy the top-end premium build of every bike. I really love my Category 3 Madone. It's just as good as that one. And I feel like I don't want to take that away from you, definitely. But my point is that in that world of some sort of efficiency, that if a brand's able to put more of its time and effort into a one grade of carbon to rule them all, there you go, that then you can spec it with a really good Force build or whatever it might be, and that's where your value comes in. And because I don't know, I just feel cautious around that chat because I know you see a lot of GC Performance always does a video about like the third category of SL8 or Madone, and the title will be, is this the best Madone you can buy, or something like that. To be fair, I don't have enough experience riding that level to know.
Okay.
50-minute club.
Oh, you're 50. Okay.
Well, I don't know. This is just random things that pops into Chris's head.
Okay. What do we got?
What's your go-to width of handlebar tape? Because I was mocked for my selection recently. Mocked.
Oh, that's a big call. Big call.
Now, I chose some 3.5 mil.
Oof, dog.
That's what I was told.
What are you doing?
I was told it was a dog of a bar tape.
No, it's not a cricket bat. Gosh.
Have I got to rip that off? Okay. I wasn't aware that this was... Everyone's sending in your dog of your fast bike or dog bike. I want your handlebar tape width.
Well, the bike brands have spent thousands and millions of dollars to make the handlebar steer, and you're wrapping it with thicker tape. That's what's there.
It's probably right. Actually, maybe I need to... Yeah, Edwin, strip and rebuild next week. We got to get rid of that.
Yeah.
Get rid of the 3.5. So what are you? Are you a 3-man or go lower?
I have no fucking idea.
I didn't.
I don't like thick tape because it's easier to grip a thinner bar.
I must admit, I didn't know 3.5 was a lot. When I got it, brought it in, the boys just started laughing. Like, what is this junk? What are you talking about? 3.5? There you go. So that's too much.
Oh, okay.
So FYI.
Oh, so that's interesting, right? Because people. So that's like the in thing is thinner tape. Is the boys at the shop. Okay.
Yep.
Right. Keep that in mind.
So I reckon I might look at sub 2 in the future. My future. Other chat was I'm trying to bring back the Pro Air because it's the most unrideable helmet in summer I own.
Okay.
So now Ben Healy's been riding it again at Tour of Provence, greatest race of the year, mind you. And I noticed that he's running the sunglass solution. So I'm thinking to myself, right, maybe this is how we bridge the gap to make the Pro Air a little bit more approachable both heat-wise and style-wise, because I still think and I agree with this, it's a very try-hard look.
Mm.
It's the most try-hard look you can have.
Pretty much top of the list.
Top of the list. So I've got a wrap on it that tries to dumb that down by, having fun with the BMX Bandit thing to try and tone down the try-hardness. The visor, just as soon as that visor goes on, bang. It's like S tier, try-hard. But then as soon as the visor comes off and you put the sunnies on, it goes to a new place. It goes to just a douche look. Like it's like it's the image of Primoz at the end of the Tour time trial with his helmet tipped right up backwards. It goes to a place that no one wants to go. Mm-hmm. And so I'm trying to find a pair of sunglasses at the moment because you need something that is ventilated, because obviously otherwise you're just going to be sweatboxing it up. Ben Healy's gone for like a POC sunglass that cuts him here. I think you need to go a bigger sunglass to try and get rid of the douche look.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, is this just a battle that I need to just have to give up? Or what do you think?
No, I think you really need to get used to it. I mean, look at the front of the peloton in Dubai or wherever the hell they're racing in Saudi Arabia. There's guys with the Giro Aero heads, time trial helmets on, without the visor, because then it makes it legal to use in a road race. So you're ahead of the curve. I think you want to stay ahead of the curve. The visor has gaps in it, though. I'm not convinced that the problem with the heat management of the Pro Air is the visor. I think it's just a hot helmet.
Mm.
So I think you just got to accept it.
Okay. Well, as I said, it is a twofold situation for me. It is part heat, part douche. And so I felt like taking the visor off did just take me down a step of douchebag turning up. Because I can kind of talk to people pre and post race. I'm less like, you're totally cut off from the world.
Yeah.
You're in this no, I'm just racing. Don't talk to me.
Like a space
cadet type thing.
Yeah.
The main issue with the helmet still is like if you win a race and you're not wearing that helmet, it's way cooler than winning a race with that helmet. Flip side, like if you get dropped and you're wearing that helmet, you're a dickhead. You're pathetic. Whereas if you get dropped and you're just normal Chris and Jersey and whatever, it's like, oh, Chris got dropped. It's not as, you know what I mean? Like there's almost like too much pressure on if you're running it or you're taking it too seriously or something like that. But I want to, I don't know, I want to try it.
I think you just need to grow a pair, Chris. The horse is bolted in regards to looking like you're trying too hard.
Okay.
It's just like whatever. No one in the UK seems to care.
That's
I
true.
think just stick the visor on and just go for it. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what's happened to Jesse Coyle trailer life? When you last left us, you were going to be restarting the fitness career with you and your son attached via a trailer. Give me an update.
So the problem is, it's too. I'm not going to have him nap in there. It's too uncomfortable. It's not fair. But he's not old enough that I can explain what he's doing in the back of there, watching my heels turn around for an hour. So it doesn't work right now. It's just cruel. Maybe when he's older and I can be like, we're going out for an hour and you're just going to be sitting there.
Oh, cool. I'm going to sit there and watch your ass for an hour. Yeah. Great. Thanks, Dad.
Look after you the rest of the day. You can go in there for an hour. At least give him a book or something and you just explain it. Like, I feel like that's better than just, he's just sitting in there like, what the... So it wasn't really, it hasn't really been working for cycling.
Did you actually have a crack at it?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
I did an hour in there.
Okay.
Yeah. And it was fine. It was okay.
But he was just bored or fell asleep?
Like the 1-year-olds get bored. Like I just felt bad because I can't explain what is going on. It's just like going for a really long drive in the car, 3 times a week. It's just like almost cruel. So, I'm too soft.
Okay.
So
I don't think that's it. I think you've come to there's a reason you don't see it, Jesse.
Mm.
It's just doesn't work.
Mm.
I think it can potentially work with a sibling, but because at least they can actually, I don't know, chat and do something back there. Whereas, as I said, my two just straight away.
Well, you didn't fall asleep, so it wasn't really. Yeah, it wasn't that. It's good for running though. I've done some running with it just to do some exercise if I can't be bothered putting kit on, and obviously if I'm looking after him, I can't go for a ride otherwise. So it's useful for that, but for now, not using it for training purposes for cycling.
Fair enough.
Just quick update on the NERO suit 2025 edition with the cargo pockets. If you do want to get one, if you want a size medium or a size large, there is 2 left in each of those. So they will be sold out soon. And we've still got a decent amount left in the small and the extra large on the sizes. So that's a stock update. If you do purchase one of those, thanks for supporting the show. Check out the reviews coming in on the product listing. And yeah, global shipping, paying your local currency. Get your hands on one.
And I just wanted to quickly mention the guys at Mental Wheels Foundation who are riding from Sydney to Hobart. I'll drop a link to their charity ride down below. All right, Jessica, we'll be back next week. Until then.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
See you real soon.
Bye-bye.